So we are going to cover Tartuffe today. Tartuffe was written by Moliere, who followed Shakespeare. So Shakespeare died in the early 1600s. Moliere was born in a few years after Shakespeare died. He was the son of the king's upholsterer, right? So not a, a kind of prestigious job, and they had plenty of money. He was an actor and a playwright, which in the time period he lived, in the country he lived, you had to always please whoever was the king at the time. Shakespeare had the same issue. He couldn't write his plays or have his plays performed if they didn't meet with the approval of whoever was the king or queen at the time. So, and again, he headed his own theatrical troupe. Again, similar to Shakespeare, he wrote and acted in his plays. Moliere wrote and acted in his plays at the court of Louis XIV. And he's known for his satire. Okay, we started out last week with A Modest Proposal. We lost one student already. But, so that was satire. So what did we say satire is? Sarcasm, okay? What else? Exaggeration. And what is the purpose of satire?
It was to kind of like hold up a mirror to the intended audience.
Good. So there's an issue. I want to bring attention to it. And if I do it directly, say, hey, I don't like this, it's not going to be successful. So we kind of hold up a mirror in this exaggerated, ironic, wordplay kind of way to draw attention to it. So that's what he did. And he ridiculed groups like wives, playboys, self-righteous intellectuals, people who were greedy, educated women, and hypochondriacs. So what kind of groups get satirized today in 2020? Politicians, very much so. Who else gets satirized? Millennials? Okay, so what are millennials known for that they get made fun of? Okay, addicted to their phones. What else? What other groups get satirized? Celebrities, good. Any particular kind of celebrity?
I guess that would be like the more famous ones, like a pop star, maybe.
Okay.
Someone that's not, very well known.
Maybe like comedians.
Comedians? Okay. So when you think of like Saturday Night Live, who is getting satirized? I mean, politicians is the first thing I think of, but who else is getting satirized there?
Usually people who take themselves very seriously.
Okay, good. Like?
Celebrities who take themselves very seriously.
Okay. So do any of these same groups get satirized today?
Greedy folks. I guess self-righteous intellectuals would be one as well.
Okay. All right, so Moliere's purpose is to shine a light, to put up a mirror for these groups and say, do you see really what you're doing here? And so he wrote most of the plays his troops did. Now, the Catholic Church did not have a respectful or admirable relationship with the actors or the plays, and actors were excommunicated if they acted in some plays. So in his case, it meant he was denied a proper burial when he died, so they had to sneak him in to a cemetery, and a kind priest agreed to do it. But generally, actors were excommunicated. So he was born in 1622, again, less than 10 years after Shakespeare died. And we're in the theater in France following neoclassical standards. So this is a little different from what we see in Shakespeare's plays. Some of the differences are There is tragedy and comedy, but the comedy is more in the wordplay. It's not quite as crude as like the gravediggers in Hamlet or pulling out of somebody's eyes. So it's not as physical, but the kind of comedy, as we read in Tartuffe, is more, you're making fun of somebody, you're using a lot of wordplay, but it's not the physical kind of humor or tragedy that we see in Shakespeare. The structure is simple, and it often follows a single plot that's limited in time. So does anybody know who came up with the ideal play structure that is one plot with a limited amount of characters that takes place in one place within 24 hours? Who came up with that structure for the ideal play? A Greek philosopher. You could take a guess.
Socrates?
No, good guess though. Aristotle, right? Shakespeare did not follow that at all. The ancient Greek playwrights like Sophocles, if you think of Antigone or Oedipus Rex, they follow that format, right? Even though there might be flashbacks, it takes place within 24 hours in one period. So that was kind of like the ideal. And does Moliere follow that in Tartuffe? How long is the whole time period from beginning to end of the play?
Not long.
Less than a day, right? So he follows that. So it's a comedy of manners, and there are types, okay? So in this time period, we're 17th century France. The types are tyrannical and foolish father, Orgon, obviously, a clever maid, a naive, obedient, lovesick daughter, a hot-headed son, an old lady with amusing eccentricities. So if somebody were to write a play today, and we do have a playwriting class, which I recommend. We have a playwright in our faculty, Joseph Gallo. So if you were going to write a play today and you were going to include a few types, what are the kind of types that would be applicable in 2020? I'll get you started. Pothead skateboarder. Okay? What else? What's a type that is relevant today?
A female boss, a female uptight boss, a female uptight.
An uptight female boss. I feel like you may have had one of those. What else?
I'm thinking like maybe like a strict parent, like a mom, strict mom.
A strict mom, called helicopter parent. Okay, definitely, that's a type. There's been books written about that. What else?
Inattentive, kind of dumb dad.
Inattentive, not really paying attention, not too smart dad.
And a little racist.
And let's add a little racist. So are we going back to Archie Bunker, or who are we talking about here?
I can't believe it was being dropped.
Is that, I don't know, Married with Children?
I was thinking the dad on Stranger Things.
Oh, I'm not familiar with Stranger Things. So, but that's a current type, right? What else? The nerd, the geek.
Or like you said, the pothead skateboard. Maybe he had like a friend that was like scared to do anything.
It's the opposite.
Like yeah. Like
Okay,
opposite.
okay. Shy, introverted. So we have types today as they had back then. Do any of these still apply today as types? Are there still naive, obedient, lovesick daughters?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think less than that, maybe.
Obedient? Really?
Obedient.
There are obedient daughters? I don't know. I don't have any daughters. Okay, and the social conventions. Father's control of daughter's marriage. Does that still happen today?
Well, and with me, yeah.
Absolutely. I have a friend, who's Indian. His sister recently got married. My friend met the groom before the sister did, because he lived in America, sister was still back in India. He met the groom and checked him out, said everything's good. She met him about a week before they got married. So there's still a lot of arranged marriages in a lot of cultures today. And so we still have that. Do we still have a virtuous wife? I hope so. If virtuous means keeping vows, right? Chastity. Where are we with that in 2020 in American society?
Not as serious.
What do you mean not as serious?
But chastity meaning like sexual relations, right?
Right, not having any.
Well, it's just, it's just way more frequent to have casual sex now than it was way back when.
Now, there are some religious people who believe you should abstain from sex before marriage, but I've also heard, is it called straight edge? What is that?
So no sex, no drugs, no alcohol, teenagers?
Yeah,
Straight edge.
is that still a thing?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. So there is some chastity. Father's control over son's economic status. What do we think about that in 2020?
So
Yeah.
most people stay rich. That's how most people stay rich.
Well, what I have learned is that, in England, you passed on the land to your sons and they passed on land. One of my favorite shows, Downton Abbey. You're land rich and money poor. So you have land and you pass it on and you pass it on. Wealth stays in families because of inheritance, right? So if your great-grandparents were wealthy and they managed to hold on to their wealth, they passed it to their grandparents, they passed it to your parents are going to pass it to you, and wealth will stay in the family, right? So if that's the case, fathers do have control over their son's economic status. They could disinherit them, and then you're kind of in trouble. So there are surprises. What's one surprise that, something that happened in Tartuffe that surprised you?
When he started to go at the wife.
Yeah, okay.
It's a serious goal.
Yeah. Okay. The play is didactic. What does that mean? Didactic. It's meant to teach you something. Okay, so there's various purposes for art. What are some of the purposes of art? Art, in our case, a movie, a painting, a play, a book. What is the purpose of art?
Maybe someone teach you something.
Okay, so the didactic purpose to teach you something. What else?
To convey like a message or maybe an image that they want to show without, exactly telling them.
Okay, convey a message or an image. What else?
Tell a universal story.
Okay, to convey a story, something about you that you want to get out there. Songs do that. Sometimes song is, about your life. What else? To entertain you, to help you escape, right? A lot of art is escapist. To scare you, if it's a horror movie. So art has a lot of different purposes, but a lot of art in older literature is meant to teach you something. It's got a moral. Don't do this, do this, right? Because bad things are going to happen if you do it. So it's didactic, and that follows the Greek and Roman drama tradition. It's influenced by commedia, by Roman comedies and French farces. It's less witty. It's not, as I mentioned, as slapsticky. It's not like Laurel and Hardy, get hit in the head, fall on your back kind of thing. So the humor is more in the words, not in the actions. And the goal is personal and social reform. So the goal of Jonathan Swift in A Modest Proposal, if we could say he had a goal, what was his goal? It wasn't to have a good meal.
Well, you said social reform.
Right. So specifically, what did he want to reform?
The relations between England and Ireland.
The relation between England and Ireland, the economic status of the Irish Catholics, and their view of themselves. He had a lot of things that he wanted to do. So some of the themes in Tartuffe is the failure of clerics. What do I mean by clerics?
Clergyman, church.
Any religious kind of leader to live up to established standards of morality. So one of the questions as we look at this is, should religious leaders meet a higher standard, and if so, why, and if not, why not? So if you're a priest, a pastor, an imam, is there a higher standard for you?
Yes, because you're like looked at as like a role model.
Okay, because they're a role model, okay? I mean, we could even say that with sports figures today, and people have said, you know, get your act together because kids are looking up to you, or, you know, musical stars, right? But why religious leaders particularly? Why do they have to be role models?
Well, they often claim to be speaking on behalf of God, so
Okay.
it's pretty serious.
Yeah, so are people looking to them as a representative of God?
Well, I guess it depends on your religion, right? But with,
True.
with Christians, the Pope is the vicar of Christ. So
Right.
in that case, it may be different than others.
Okay. So what happens when a religious figure has an epic fail? It's publicized. What else happens?
People stop believing in that religion sometimes.
So that's a side effect or a major effect, but it can cause people to lose their faith, right? So it's a lot of responsibility on somebody who wants to take on the role of a religious leader. You should be a role model. People are looking to you to understand what the religion is and even their relationship with God, right? So it's pretty serious. So does Tartuffe meet any religious standards? If you can find one, let me know. I can't find anything he meets, right? The selling of religion, oh, that never happens anymore, right? Being sarcastic. What is the selling of religion?
Convincing you to join in,
What?
convincing you to join in the religion.
You could join in without giving any money.
There was a time where people used to sell fake replicas of Christians' statues of Jesus.
Okay.
And you could pay to be cleansed as well.
So we're going back to one of the reasons for the Reformation back in Luther's theses on the Wittenberg door.
95 Theses. The 95 Theses.
Yes, and I'm not going to get the date wrong on the in the early 1500s. One of the reasons was if you paid money, you could get your sins forgiven, and Martin Luther didn't think that was biblical, right? So up till today, relics, replicas of things, if you give this money, God will bless you kind of idea, right? So yes, there is still the selling of religion. There is a big emphasis on reason versus emotion. And so you could look at all the characters we just went through. Which one really exemplifies reason? I can think of two candidates more than the others. Cleant, number one.
Doreen. She's more.
Doreen?
a little-
I wouldn't.
With her
I
sarcasm.
wouldn't
With her
put-
sarcasm.
Okay.
Maybe not. Sorry.
Who else?
Elmira.
Elmira, I put her in there too. She tricks Tartuffe,
Fair enough.
so she uses logic to she knows that if she's alone with him, he's gonna try and seduce her. And she knows that her husband won't believe it unless he sees it, so she sets up that whole scene. And who is more character who displays a lot of emotion? Damis? I didn't think of him, but yes. Orgon? Tartuffe. Maybe.
He plays it. Not that he feels it.
Oh, okay.
He's very
Well, so that's more reason. He's using emotion as a foil, right, Omar?
Madame Pernod.
Madame Pernell, emotion? Yeah,
Like at the beginning, she was like telling how our grandchildren are all stupid and
yeah.
everyone is wrong about what they say. Everything's wrong that comes out of their mouth.
So what about Marianne? Reason or emotion? Yeah, pretty emotional. We have the struggle between the religious and the secular. We have the mobility of classes, the changing family structure. Changing family structure. I guess the family structure has been changing for centuries. It's still changing, right? And the role of women. Have we figured out the role of women?
Yeah,
Really?
same as a way like now,
Yeah.
same as everyone else's.
Okay. Did anybody watch the Super Bowl? Did you see the ad, which took me a minute to get the wordplay? Make space for women.
Yeah. The Olay commercial.
I don't even know what it was for. What was it for?
What about the shampoo?
Okay. Yeah. So we're still kind of figuring that out. Are we ever going to elect a female president in this country?
It'll take some time.
In my lifetime? I don't know.
Maybe.
Okay, so comedy of manners, they deal with the social conventions of gentlemen and gentlewomen in a sophisticated age. One of my favorite authors, Jane Austen, does a magnificent job of doing that. There's an imitation of contemporary fashion, making fun of what's fashionable. A fop and dandy. Has anybody read or seen Scarlet Pimpernel? It's one of my absolute favorite books, and I saw the play on Broadway. The basic story is English fop. What's a fop?
Dandy aristocrat.
Yeah. So what do you picture when you think of a dandy aristocrat?
A slightly effeminate, do nothing.
Okay, good. Slightly effeminate, do nothing, with his cravat tied just so and long ruffles coming out of his sleeves. Oh, what a fine day we're having today. That's a fop. So the main character, the Scarlet Pimpernel, played by Anthony Andrews in the movie, is a fop. He marries a gorgeous French woman, forgetting the actress's name, and it's during the French Revolution. So what's happening during the French Revolution to the nobility in France?
Getting driven out.
They're getting their heads cut off. He marries her for love. He doesn't know that she has ties to the people who are killing the royalty. He is the farthest thing from a fop there is because he disguises himself and goes into France and sneaks out the royalty. So there's all this mistrust and not understanding and total lack of communication. He is the Scarlet Pimpernel. And when she realizes it, I'm getting goosebumps. She looks at some of the wallpaper and she remembers the seal on an envelope, and she sees the Scarlet Pimpernel everywhere she looks, and she's like, oh my God, it's my husband. Almost too late. Fantastic movie, really good book. You guys have to read it. Okay. Can you shut that off? Thank you very much. In teams, just pair up with